Hi, it's Suzanne. Welcome back to Tuesday's book recommendations. Today I have 5 picture book recommendations for the little writer or creative artist in your life. I specifically picked out these titles because I thought of something I heard Cheryl Strayed say in an interview, and it was that she didn't know until she was in university that there were female authors, that was something that was an option for her. She only had pictured and really was aware of old dead white men. And it made me think how much I really wanted to make sure that my daughter was aware that writing was an option for her if that was something that she wanted. Now, my daughter likes to write already and to create. She's write poems, and I encourage that sort of thing. And she has her own journal. And I will say that she sees her mommy doing all of those things as well. So it isn't a foreign concept to her, but books certainly help. The books that I have selected are for the reasons I just mentioned. And I chose a couple that would encourage a child directly to be a writer themselves. And then I chose a couple that showed writers as children, so that they could really understand that everybody that's an adult was once a child, and specifically the writers that they may enjoy and are familiar with, they were once little children themselves. I'm going to show you the books that speak directly to children about being artists and writers themselves. This one, in particular, Someone Like Me, is a beautiful book, and it's a very simple story that you could read to a young child. And like I said, my daughter's 7, and she still enjoys this story. I enjoy them all, but if you were a little girl who listened to stories, and then it goes on. Yeah. So this is very simple, but the message I find has a huge impact. So a simple story with a huge impact that is delivered in a very gentle and beautiful way. So you listen. I'm just going to, oh, the cover is falling off. We'll just take it off. I'm not stopping the video for that. Yeah. Look, she's just reading on the way home. Who can't identify with that? Okay, well, if you're an avid reader, you probably can. I'm just going to show you, I'm just going to read you the last page, okay? And here we go. It continues. If you, da-da-da, and white horses to ride through dreams, you might be someone like me. A writer. So you're not quite sure where it's going all the way through, and that's the answer. It's really beautiful. Highly recommend this one. This one, I didn't say the author. It's Patricia McLaughlin, and it was illustrated by Chris Chabon. The next one is All the World a Poem, and this is Giles Thibault, Man and Gauthier. And this is about a little girl writing poetry. And it, again, simple illustrations, but really powerful story. I love poems, sweet and silly. I love poems, long and frilly. All the poems dreaming on the shelf. Day 1. Anything the world can be, a nighttime lush or daytime glee, is poetry. And it goes on to say, what can be poetry? Poetry is, I write a poem on the waves and on the wind above. I'm not reading it all, obviously. I'm just showing you. Just to give you an idea of the tone of this book and how the story's going. I'm going to make sure I get all the... There we go. If I wrote a poem on the back of a cat, would you laugh at that? I would not, would you? Poetry is a shallow returning to a springtime tree. But my favorite kind of poetry is this, my friend. You close to me. Oh, so sweet. Okay, now the next 2 books are specifically about authors when they were children. This is Emily Writes, Emily Dickinson and Her Poetic Beginnings, and this is by Jane Austen, and it's illustrated by Christine Davenier. I specifically wanted this one about Emily Dickinson because we do read Emily Dickinson in a lot of her poems in our poetry tea time. So when I saw this, I wanted to grab it. Spring 1854, Amherst, Massachusetts. Little Emily tiptoes into father's study. being as quiet as dust. She finds a pencil and a stub. Perhaps she thinks I will make a poem. She keeps reading her poems to Mrs. Mack, who is the cook, and she encourages her all the way through this book. No matter how busy she is, she takes the time and listens to her and encourages her. Her mom was sick. It's really lovely and encouraging. And there's a blurb, see in the back, about Emily Dickinson and who she is. So an author's note if you want to have more information. And then it lists some of her poems in the back. So the final part, she sits down with the cook, who's yet again encouraged her to keep writing. And they're enjoying something. Hope, says Emily a bit dreamily as she bites into a donut. Yum, she mumbles. I had hoped for that. The donut is as warm and sweet in her mouth as any new poem, and as true. Delightful. It really is a delightful book. So this is Ordinary Extraordinary Jane Austen by Deborah Hopkinson, and it's illustrated by Kin Lang. Now, I originally found this book in the library and then had to have it. I decided to purchase it. This is about Jane Austen as a little girl. I mean, it says it here. It is universally acknowledged that Jane Austen is one of our greatest writers. But before that, she was just an ordinary girl. I love that. Very beautiful illustrations. And the story is lovely. It really talks about her personality. Oh. She had plenty of opportunity to observe. Jane and her sister were the only girls in the house. Her father had opened up a boarding house, a school for boys. It was like growing up inside a story full of fascinating and noisy characters. And her dad really encouraged her and her sister to read and to write, which at the time was quite amazing. It's a lot of fun. Now, 200 years later, I wonder if Jane would be surprised to learn that her books are still loved and read by people all over the world. Maybe. Then again, maybe not. And the final book on my list, you might have seen this in one of the book hauls that I did. So this is called Finding Narnia. It's by Caroline McAllister, and it's illustrated by Jessica Lennon. The story of C.s.Lewis and his brother. And it really talks about him using his imagination as a child and how different he and his brother were. It talks about them and what they used to do and how they used to play and all the stories that he used to make up when he was a child. And that when his brother went off to do other things, he was still using his imagination. And then he kept, he found a real job. And then eventually he came back to writing when he was older in life. Look, Narnia. It's beautiful. It's beautifully illustrated. And oh, look, there's Aslan. It's interesting to hear how the story of Narnia came to be, considering it's so popular. Would have thought he was writing his entire life, but actually did something totally different. And then when the war broke out in England, they had him and his brother moved back in there with each other. And two girls came from London to stay with them, and they asked them what the wardrobe was for in their house, and that's how the whole thing began. See? And the girls asked, what's on the other side? I think that's fantastic. So that's a lot of fun. I will show you the books again. They are going to be listed down below, but someone like me, All the World of Home, Emily writes, Ordinary Extraordinary Jane Austen, and Finding Narnia. All right, that's everything. I hope you found the book you're looking for the little writer and creative in your life, and I will see you soon with another bookish video.